The HAVW A6 Juggernaut, or as I always call it, the Clone Turbo Tank, was a massive armored transport that would rain hailfire down on the Separatists. The main usage of it was, funnily enough, as a troop transport, although its firepower made it more like a mobile fortress that could ram through enemy lines and deploy its troops then. It was developed by Quad Drive Yards as an upgraded version of its predecessor, the HAVW A5 Juggernaut, and it was more than double the A5 size in length and height, coming in at 49.4 meters in length and 30.4 meters in height. For perspective, this also made the turbo tank double the size of the ATTE, which only comes in at 22 meters in length and 13 meters in height. What made it stand out the most, though, was that compared to the often seen walkers or hovercraft vehicles, it was moving on 10 massive armored wheels. Each of its 10 wheels was independently mounted and suspended, which allowed for a surprisingly high degree of articulation over rugged terrain, as it could roll over anything in its path. Also, its top speed was 160 kilometers per hour, which makes it earn the name Turbo Tank. Now, just imagine having these guys as playable vehicles in Battlefront 2, where they just roll over the droids and crush them. Would be pretty fun, right? The Turbo Tank's armor was composed of thermally superconducting plating capable of absorbing and dispersing the energy and heat from incoming fire over a broad area. This meant it could charge at enemies firing at it and disperse the blasters while closing the distance. Its interior allowed it to carry a whopping 300 fully equipped clone troopers, which were arranged on 2 decks and individual jump seats. It could also transport a mix of close support craft, including speeder bikes and AT-RTs. Despite its size, the turbo tank could be driven by as few as 2 pilots with the aid of an advanced automation package, though a full crew of 12 was standard. The full complement included a pilot, co-pilot, vehicle commander, navigator, engineer, communications officer, and forward gunners. The command deck was located in the forward section of the hull and served as the central hub for vehicle control and navigation. Directly behind the command center was a small trauma bay, staffed by a medic or medical droid. A small command bunker positioned at the back of the tank housed a backup command deck and the remaining gunnery stations. This second command center was also the reason I could never really tell if this was the front or not as a kid. A distinct feature of the turbo tank was also its extendable observation pod, mounted on a mast above the vehicle's front. This pod gave a spotter an elevated and expansive view of the battlefield, and could retract into the hull when not in use. However, despite its 10 wheels that made it drivable on most terrains, its turning capabilities were an issue at times due to its sheer size. Thus, it was better suited for open field warfare rather than urban engagements in cities or clustered areas. The Juggernaut name is also thanks to its heavy armament, as it could deliver devastating firepower for a range of different combat scenarios. Its arsenal included a dorsal turret-mounted heavy laser cannon and a rapid repeating rotary laser cannon manned by a clone gunner. 2 medium anti-personnel laser cannons were mounted on the hull, alongside 2 twin forward-facing anti-personnel blaster cannons. Additionally, it featured 2 turreted projectile launchers capable of firing variable concussion grenades for anti-infantry, or guided missiles against enemy vehicles whose uses can be seen prominently during the Battle of Kashyyyk. According to Quad Drive Yards, the clone turbo tank's firepower was capable of delivering heat damage to unshielded targets, equivalent to that of a small nuclear weapon. It saw usages primarily during the Clone Wars, where it can be seen on multiple occasions, like on Felucia, where they get overrun by Separatists and Plo Koon drove in a convoy of them when they discovered Sifo-Dyas's destroyed shuttle. Obviously, its most prominent appearance was during the Battle of Kashyyyk, where multiple turbo tanks can be seen alongside AT-APs defending the beach from the incoming droid army. Due to its versatility, it was also used by the Empire later, and succeeded by the HCVW A9 turbo tank, which can be seen during the Bad Batch and Rogue One transporting prisoners. Also, I think the main reason that this vehicle is as popular as it is, despite the rather limited screen time comparatively to the ATTE, is of course the LEGO models. It's one of the most popular remakes for them, with 4 separate versions having been released since its inception. The 2006 and 2010 versions are some of the greatest sets ever made, and sadly, the new 2020 and 2025 turbo tanks are significantly downsized and look puny in comparison. Hey LEGO, tell me how I'm supposed to fit 300 clone minifigures in this 2025 version. Okay, I know that the 2010 version couldn't fit 300 either, but I digress. Here's my proposal. UCS Clone Turbo Tank. Make it happen. The TX-130 Sabre-class fighter tank, or just Republic fighter tank, was a light, fast-attack hover tank developed by Rothana Heavy Engineering for the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. To add to the Republic's Walker arsenal and to combat the Separatist AAT hover tanks, the TX-130 was introduced as a faster and more nimble armored fighting vehicle. It was rather small, as its length came in at only 8.2 meters, including a repulsor lift propulsion system that allowed it to hover at speed over various terrain types. The fighter tanks could reach an insane top speed of 320 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest vehicles in the Republic's arsenal. Wait, did I read that right? 320 kilometers per hour? Holy, we got a new contender for the Formula 1 races. It was often used for hit-and-run tactics where it could quickly lay waste and retreat again, which some even compared to a Jedi starfighter. Just on the ground, that is. In general, it was deployed for infantry support, or light enemy vehicles mainly, and was most effective against these as well. The TX-130 primary weaponry was a pair of linked, heavy laser cannons mounted on the hull, providing concentrated forward firepower. For secondary weapons, it varied a bit, but many units were equipped with a turret on the top of the tank, often featuring a twin medium laser cannon or a Taman back beam cannon that was operated by a cloned gunner. These versions of the Republic fighter tanks are most notable in the 2005 Battlefront 2, where you could drive them around on the Kashyyyk beach and fight the Separatist tank droids. Man, that brings back memories. On the other hand, some TX-130 variants lacked this top-mounted weapon entirely. In addition to the laser weapons, the tank carried a set of ordnance launchers mounted on its bottom. These launchers could fire a range of different rounds, including armor-piercing shells and high-energy shells. Its own armor was rather lightweight and offered protection against light anti-vehicle weapons, as it even had a small deflector shield against blasters and such. But one well-placed shot from a heavy laser cannon did usually mean the end for the Sabre tank. The fighter tank was always manned by 2 crew members, a pilot and 1 gunner. In some cases, an astromech droid was integrated into the vehicle systems to assist with navigation or repairs. The tank also had seating capacity for 2 additional passengers, which meant a commander could also be seated in one. Additionally, it could carry up to 750 kilograms of cargo, and was provisioned with supplies for 1 day of field operations. LEGO also released several versions of this tank, and even one in 2017, when it wasn't considered canon anymore, until the DICE Battlefront made it canon again in 2018. Although I own the 2017, I think the best design is actually the one from 2008. Also, please like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the content. It helps me keep making these. The RX-200 Falcon-class assault tank was a heavy anti-aircraft hover tank built by Rothana Heavy Engineering. It was also known as the stun tank due to its main weapon, the NNJ-40 Thunderbolt long-range ion cannon. This cannon was especially effective against droids, firing a focused energy beam that drained power systems including shields as well, and rendered these dysfunctional, effectively stunning them. For close-range defense, the tank was also equipped with a pair of light blasters mounted on either side of the main gun. The RX-200's design was closely related to the Republic's self-propelled, heavy artillery turbo laser, but smaller. Still, the RX-200 was pretty big at 28.6 meters long and could reach a top speed of 90 kilometers per hour. It was lightly armored though, and the crew consisted of 1 pilot and 1 gunner, with 3 additional seats for a commander and 2 passengers. The RX-200 was introduced early in the Clone Wars, but only a few notable deployments gave it widespread attention. One of its most significant appearances came during the Battle of Malastare. There, RX-200 tanks were deployed to target and disable Separatist air forces using their ion cannons. Following the battle, these same tanks were redirected to help bring down the Zillo Beast that had awoken. The tank's ion beam was successful in immobilizing the Zillo Beast. It was said that the Empire continued using these tanks as well. The ATTE, or All-Terrain Tactical Enforcer, was the mainline walker of the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. Walkers were widely used by the Republic and probably the most famous ground vehicles that were deployed. The ATTE's role was very versatile, and it was deployed on pretty much every battlefront during the war. Be it transporting platoons of clone troopers, launching direct assaults on enemy bases, or serving as a mobile home, the ATTE could do it all. They were originally designed by Rathana Heavy Engineering as a patrol vehicle for mining operations, but were then adapted for military use by the Republic. Its design was inspired by the Arctic horny whelmer, a creature native to Rathana. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine himself even noted the ATTE's menacing appearance. Inside the ATTE, the rear compartment was cramped, packed with computer consoles and a holographic communication system that could project commanding officers. Troopers were stationed in both forward and rear sections, with rear doors for deployment and a top hatch to observe the battlefield. The ATTE was equipped with electromagnetic shielding, which made it resistant to ion weaponry. It was 22 meters long and 10 meters tall, coming in at a top speed of 60 kilometers per hour, which is a lot faster than I imagined it to move. It must be funny to see its 6 legs spinning to try to keep up the 60 kilometers per hour speed. To really cement its all-terrain status, it was able to be deployed in environments like deserts, jungles, and even space, as it could be pressurized for that purpose. Also, it could magnetize its feet to climb up walls, and had fuels for over 500 kilometers of operation and supplies to sustain the crew for 3 weeks. A standard ATTE required a crew of 7 to operate. The pilot operated the 6 legs, while a spotter above relayed sensor data to 4 gunners inside. A 5th gunner manned the top-mounted mass driver cannon. The vehicle carried up to 20 troopers and included an IM-6 medical droid for emergencies, which shows that its main purpose was being an attack tank unlike the clone turbo tank. The main weapon was the heavy mass driver cannon, which could fire bunker busters, heat seekers, or sonic charges, depending on what the mission needed. It had long range, but fired slowly and lacked precision. 6 smaller laser cannons were placed around the vehicle, 4 near the cockpit and 2 in the rear to defend troops being deployed from the back. Despite its heavy armor, the ATTE had vulnerabilities. Its underbelly was a weak point. A direct hit like from a Hailfire droid's rocket could take it out. It was also vulnerable to airstrikes, as its rather slow-moving speed and big surface area made it an easy target to hit. Also, due to it being rather low on the ground, it was vulnerable to mines as well. ATTEs were built in mech factories and transported via Acclamator-class assault ships or Venator Star Destroyers. To deploy them into battle, the Lat-C Republic dropships carried them directly into combat zones, where, upon landing, they were immediately combat-ready and firing. It was often deployed alongside other Republic walkers like the AT-RT, AT-AP, and AT-OT, particularly during the Outer Rim sieges. Republic forces, including clone troopers and Jedi, commonly refer to the ATTE as a tank in battlefield planning, and the droids lovingly called it 6 legs. Personally, I also like to call it Turtle Tank. Of course, there are several LEGO versions of it. The 2013 version pretty much perfected the design, and surprisingly, the 2024 ATTE wasn't downsized like the clone turbo tank. This means that your ATTE is most likely bigger than the clone turbo tank if you only own the new one. How unfortunate. The AT-AP, or All-Terrain Attack Pod, was a heavily armed 3-legged walker, which was also nicknamed the Sniper Tank. It was developed toward the end of the Clone Wars and was an evolution of the ATTE, as its front part was quite reminiscent of an ATTE that was chopped in half and put on higher legs. With that, it came in at 11 meters in height and 15 meters in length. It was designed as a mobile gun platform for long-range strikes rather than direct assaults on infantry or vehicles, which it did with its mass driver cannon. Additional armaments included a heavy blaster turret with an exposed gunner and a medium laser cannon fixed beneath the main body. Behind the gunner's seat, a supply cage held repair tools for the walker's articulation systems. Though officially classified as a bipedal walker, the AT-AP featured a 3rd retractable leg beneath its fuselage for stability when traversing through rough terrain, or when firing its mass driver cannon. In its bideped state, it could reach a maximum speed of 60 kilometers per hour as well. While it was well armored, it wasn't well suited for solo combat due to its rather specialized functionality, and it typically operated alongside other units like the ATTE or the clone turbo tank. AT-APs were deployed in numerous Outer Rim battles. They can be seen prominently during the Battle of Kashyyyk, supporting Wookiee forces in Kachirho, and were also used on Seleucami and Felucia under Jedi Generals Stas Ali and Aayla Secura. After the Clone Wars, the Rebel Alliance had repurposed a few AT-AP for their ground forces, And they were deployable in the also-great mobile game Star Wars Commanders as the Rebels. LEGO also keeps remaking them, having 3 different versions of the Walker, with the 2014 version being the best one in my book, but I'm also very biased toward the 2013 and 2014 LEGO Star Wars sets, as I pretty much own each one of them. The AT-RT, or All-Terrain Recon Transport, was a fast, lightweight, one-man walker used extensively by the Galactic Republic during the Clone Wars. It was designed primarily for scouting, patrolling, and forward reconnaissance. It was manufactured by Quat Drive Yards and stood at 3.2 meters tall. It featured a saddle-style seat and open cockpit, giving its clone trooper pilot excellent visibility, but leaving them rather exposed to enemy fire. Despite this vulnerability, its speed and agility made it a popular choice for recon operations, with it reaching a top speed of 75 kilometers per hour. This meant it could sprint across battlefields and even perform short leaps, making it ideal for hit-and-run tactics. But I do find it a bit questionable why someone would ever sit on an AT-RT if you could get into the Republic fighter tank that will just speed through with its 320 kilometers per hour. The AT-RT was armed with a nose-mounted repeating blaster cannon and a mortar launcher, making it pretty effective against infantry. A single AT-RT could not take on heavier vehicles alone, but they were often deployed in groups. A group of 5 could overwhelm a standard AAT tank quite easily, for example. The AT-RT was also equipped with motion detectors and sensor systems that relayed battlefield data to forward command units. Deployment methods of the AT-RT varied. While most were disembarked from acclimator assault ships, others were delivered from the back of lat gunships directly into combat. Some modified AT-TEs or clone turbo tanks could also carry AT-RTs using special rear cargo lifts, and deployed if deemed necessary. Because of their light construction, AT-RTs were easily destroyed by heavy weapons. Republic commanders often used them in fast-moving scout packs with specially trained ARF troopers. They were also used in civil security roles by planetary police or militia. Overall, the AT-RTs saw action in many battles across the Clone Wars. From Christophsis to Ryloth and even Umbara, they were used pretty much everywhere. AT-RTs were even part of the assault on the Jedi Temple during the Purge, and continued to see limited use during the early Galactic Civil War. They were eventually replaced by the AT-ST and phased out by the Empire. Some of them also fell into the hand of the Rebels, and as was the tradition of Star Wars Commander, to reuse old Clone Wars vehicles for the Rebels. You could deploy them if you played as the Rebel faction. The AT-OT, or All-Terrain Open Transport, was a Republic troop carrier used during the Clone Wars. Unlike other walkers in the AT series, the AT-OT wasn't built for combat. Instead, it served as a heavy armored cargo walker, mainly used to move large numbers of clone troopers behind friendly lines. The 8-legged walker was equipped with 4 laser cannons, 2 at the front and 2 at the back. However, its open-top design left passengers and troops completely exposed to aerial attacks. It was only 14 meters long and had seating for at least 34 troopers, but could likely carry more due to its open bed layout. But still, 34 troopers in an open-roof transport is kinda laughable compared to the turbo tank. Am I glazing the turbo tank a bit much? Yes, but I want to. And because of the AT-OT's vulnerability from above, it was rarely sent into frontline combat. It typically operated at the edges of battlefields, unloading troops at outer perimeters. Its design made it particularly useful in forested areas, where natural cover reduced its exposure like on Felucia. They mainly relied on AT-TEs or other Republic vehicles for protection, though. AT-OTs were deployed in several campaigns during the Clone Wars, including the Outer Rim sieges. A closed-top variant of the AT-OT can also be seen in the Galactic Defense mobile game. The AT-OT is also most famously part of the LEGO Republic Dropship and AT-OT set from 2008, a set that is going for more than $800 in a used condition on the secondary market. It's a truly beautiful set, and LEGO fans have been screaming for a remake, but to no avail, until now. If it gets remade today, it'll most likely be downsized anyway, so there's no point to it in my eyes. We'll get the old one at some point for sure. The ATHE, or All-Terrain Heavy Enforcer, was a heavy combat walker developed by Quat Drive Yards during the Clone Wars. It was designed to improve upon the ATTE, with the ATHE featuring long legs that raised its hull higher off the ground, protecting it from mines and improving the firing angles of its laser cannons. While this elevation enhanced combat effectiveness, the walker's narrow feet made it more likely to sink in soft terrain. Despite this trade-off, the ATHE saw widespread use by the Grand Army of the Republic at the end of the Clone Wars, and served as a precursor to the later AT-AT. With that, we conclude the all-terrain walkers that the Republic used, and move on to artillery classes. The Self-Propelled Heavy Artillery, or SPHA, was a massive 12-legged gun platform built by Rathana Heavy Engineering. When equipped with a turbo laser cannon, it was specifically referred to as the Self-Propelled Heavy Artillery Turbo Laser, or SPHA-T. These enormous vehicles were the largest ground-based weapons used by the Grand Army of the Republic, coming in at 140 meters in length. Yep, that's more than 6 ATTEs or 3 clone turbo tanks, and is basically the size of a small skyscraper. This size was a necessity, as that's what was needed to contain the reactor to power the walker and its turbo laser cannon. The SPHA-T would move across terrain slowly on its 12 articulated legs, and once in place and stationary, would use the long-range turbo laser mounted on its back. This massive weapon was the main reason for this walker's existence, and it fired a solid laser beam for several seconds that was capable of punching through the shields and hulls of enemy starships, as seen with the fleeing Separatist core ships on Geonosis. However, the system had a limited charge capacity and could only be powered up to a certain level before requiring a charge. Operating an SPHA-T required no fewer than 25 crew members to operate it, with 10 of these being gunners and an additional 30 clone troopers for protection. SPHA-Ts were often deployed in squadrons of 4 and used to deliver heavy fire support from the rear of an advancing formation. They were typically positioned behind assault walkers like the ATTE and were usually well guarded, as their size and functionality as this massive artillery cannon made them prime targets for enemy commanders. The SPHA were carried aboard acclimator assault ships and stored at the rear of the landing bay behind the ATTEs, which were supposed to bust open enemy troopers before the SPHA-Ts could deploy safely. Its most prominent deployment was during the Battle of Geonosis, and sadly it wasn't really seen much since, except for in the 2003 animated Clone Wars series. As a final note, the 140-meter size was a retcon, and the original size of the SPHA was noted as 40 meters. The UTAT, or Unstable Terrain Artillery Transport, was a transport and artillery vehicle designed for environments where walkers couldn't operate effectively. The UTAT was co-developed by Quat Drive Yards and Mekun Corporation, after Republic walkers suffered major losses on Agamar, where natural bridges collapsed under the weight. To solve this, the UTAT used a repulsor lift ski system, with 16 skis adapted to terrain which were supported by 4 central repulsor lift plates for propulsion. The skis could reverse polarity to create gription fields, enabling the vehicle to climb steep surfaces. Though this system absorbed the vehicle's weight and provided stability when firing, the UTAT was rather slow and hard to maneuver due to its mass, with a top speed of 45 km per hour. It was 24 meters long, and its armament included 3 front-facing cannons with 2 side-mounted and 1 dorsal anti-infantry gun, giving the vehicle the nickname Trident. It also featured bomblet generators capable of unleashing ion-charged payloads on droid forces. At the rear, it also had additional anti-personnel turrets. Internally, the cockpit housed a driver and gunner, while the front section could carry up to 20 troops. The scanning array beneath the cockpit provided situational data to assist in navigation. The rear compartment was heavily armored and held gunnery stations, though configurations varied by mission. Despite solving the bridge collapse issue, the UTAT had its flaws. Its raised profile left a vulnerable gap between the vehicle and the ground, perfect for enemy mines or explosives. A direct hit could launch the vehicle into the air and destroy it on impact, as seen during the Battle of Megiddo. The UTAT saw action in the late Clone Wars, especially in environments with fragile infrastructure like the aforementioned Megiddo and Katonai Moidia. Jedi General Ki-Adi-Mundi and Commander Bakara led UTAT units during the assault on Megiddo to clear paths across the city's network of bridges. In the LEGO world, the year 2025 sadly still wasn't the year where we got an adaptation of this set, even though the rumors heavily implied that it was coming. Sadly, it was replaced by the 2025 clone turbo tank. At least we finally got the Galactic Marines figures. The AV-7 anti-vehicle artillery cannon was a heavy artillery weapon used by the Grand Army of the Republic during the Clone Wars. Manufactured by the weapons firm Tame & Back, the AV-7 stood at 15 meters tall and was operated by a single clone gunner. The cannon was fully automated, making the operator's role focused entirely on handling the weapon's firing system. The AV-7 itself featured just a long, heavy barrel that fired high-powered plasma ammunition. Each plasma shot from an AV-7 produced a massive plasma explosion upon impact, making it especially effective against large groups of battle droids or vehicles. A single plasma shot could wipe out multiple targets in a single blast. However, this powerful artillery round was entirely ineffective against deflector shields, which was exposed during the Battle of Christophsis. The A-7 moved into position using a repulsor lift system until it reached a suitable firing location. Once in place, the weapon would deploy 4 strong metal legs that stabilized it for firing. Although the legs were primarily meant for support, they could also be used for slow, deliberate movement across the battlefield when necessary, or to turn the artillery cannon slightly. These cannons were also deployed on the artillery decks of Venator-class Star Destroyers without their legs, that is. Most notably, the AV-7 can be seen during the Battle of Christophsis and the Second Battle of Geonosis. LEGO also made this set once in 2015, and it's the only set to come with the Wolfpack Phase 2 clone troopers to this day. I myself am a proud owner of this set. The BARC Speeder, which stood for Biker Advanced Recon Commando, was a high-performance speeder bike and the predecessor of the later 74Z speeder bike we see the Empire Scout Troopers use. They were used primarily as a reconnaissance vehicle and were manufactured by the Aerotech Repulsor Company. Their usage was initially restricted to ARC troopers, but Clone Commander Neo and Bakara both insisted on the usefulness of the speeders on the battlefield, having come up with several tactics involving the BARC speeders. The speeders gave the clones an advantage as they were incredibly fast and mobile and could quickly flank enemy positions and infantry. They were equipped with 2 light blasters at the front and 2 anti-personnel light lasers on the back of the speeder. The BARC Speeder was powered by a combination of repulsor lift technology and a turbine engine mounted at the front of the vehicle on a central prong. This made it reach a top speed of 520 km per hour. It was also capable of flying at high altitudes, and in some cases, BARC Speeders were used to escort light gunships carrying important passengers through potentially hostile airspace. There were several known variants of the BARC Speeder, like the Rapid Response Police Speeder, which was used by the Coruscant Security Force. Another was a 2-person version of the BARC Speeder with a sidecar, designed to carry both a driver and a second passenger, or gunner. Additionally, there was the BARC Command Vehicle, a model used by ARC troopers. This version had a modified structure, featuring a bulkier front section and 2 large vanes extending forward from the body, giving it a slightly different profile from the standard version. Commander Neo and his BARC troopers most prominently used them during the Battle of Seleucami, and were on patrol on them before shooting down Stas Alley when Order 66 was issued. The Infantry Support Platform, or how I call it, the Clone Swamp Speeder, was a light land speeder. The ISP was developed by Aerotech Repulsor Company and was built from the base design of the standard BARC Speeder as a speeder with heavier firepower and better stability. What stood out on the Swamp Speeder was its huge turbofan and repulsor lift system that allowed it to maneuver all sorts of terrains like swamps and wetlands as well, without clogging up the repulsor system, but still able to fly low to ground. 2 pilots were seated at the rear of the vehicle, flanking the repulsor lift core, and operated both the speeder and its weapon systems. The Swamp Speeder measured 5 meters in length and could reach speeds of up to 100 kilometers per hour. Its armament included 2 forward-mounted twin-swiveling blaster cannons, which fired powerful bolts capable of damaging and disabling larger vehicles. These cannons could be individually controlled by each pilot, or linked together for concentrated fire against stronger targets. Additional features of the Swamp Speeder included 2 forward terrain scanners located on each side of the vehicle, and 2 mud shields positioned at the front to protect the pilots and core systems from any debris. The ISP was used during the Battle of Kashyyyk and was also deployed that same year in the Battle of Fallujah, and the Battle of Cato Nemoidia as part of the Republic's Outer Rim Sieges campaign. Of course, there's also been several LEGO sets of it, but the last official non-Battle Pack version came in 2010. There's also this Battle Pack one from 2013 with the Kashyyyk Trooper, but other than that, the Swamp Speeder seems to have been forgotten a bit. How sad. I always quite liked its look, as it reminded me a lot of these Everglades swamp boats. The CK6 swoop bike, or more commonly referred to as the Freeco Speeder, was a specialized swoop vehicle designed for use by clone cold assault troopers operating in freezing sub-zero climates. The name Freeco was a shortened form of freezing cold, a nickname the clone troopers gave it to reflect the conditions that the speeder was built to operate in. It was developed and manufactured by Bestman Motors and came in at 5.8 meters in length with an enclosed, heated cockpit that shielded the pilot from any of the extreme external temperatures. The vehicle was capable of reaching speeds up to 440 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest militarized swoops in service. The CK6 featured two thrusters for propulsion housed in port and starboard nacelles at the rear of the vehicle. It was most prominently featured in the Clone Wars TV series on Ordo Plutonia, where they were used to fight against the local Tals that had recently destroyed a Republic outpost. Also, I swear I would have forgotten them if it wasn't for the Freeco Speeder LEGO set from 2010, which always had a really bad rep at the time that I never understood. Is it because no one wanted a Freeco Speeder set? I don't know. The Republic Troop Transport, also referred to as the RTT, was a ground-based air speeder used for moving troops and supplies across the battlefield. It could carry up to 12 clone troopers and was operated by one pilot and one gunner. Despite being an air speeder, the Republic Troop Transport was said to be relatively slow and offered only light armor protection to its occupants. This made it vulnerable to enemy fire and unsuitable for frontline assault roles. It was, however, armed with a pair of laser cannons and two mass driver missile launchers. One fun fact about them is that they could be transported beneath the LAT dropship and be deployed by them right into the battlefront, just like what the ATTE and others. Its successor would be the Imperial Troop Transport, which featured heavily in Star Wars Rebels. The Forward Command Center was a mobile battlefield command hub that could provide strategic oversight and communication in active combat zones. As its name suggests, it was a mobile vehicle that could be deployed right at the rear of combat zones. It was designed with a circular layout, and it housed multiple computer terminals and display screens that enabled clone commanders to coordinate their operations across a given sector. These systems allowed order issuance to units deployed across the battlefront, including artillery crews, ATTE drivers, and more to update them on the progress of their battle or to coordinate a new strategy. The center could be manned by a variety of personnel depending on the situation. A commanding officer, such as a clone commander or a Jedi general, often assumed control. For example, during the first Battle of Geonosis, you can see a clone commander stationed within one of the forward command centers. During the Clone Wars on Christophsis, you can see Bail Organa as the commander of the forward command center. The mobile command center also appeared in a battle pack in 2013, and I made a mock out of it, as I quite liked its looks. And with that, I conclude this video. Please like and subscribe.